Hello, I am Jade Arnell from Rebellion Marketing, and I am here to share with you today my lovely talk on marketing strategies that actually work. Now, you might find this a bit of a weird one because marketing strategies that actually work should be every marketing strategy that you deliver, right? That's the whole point in having a marketing strategy. But what I've found over the last few years of working with kind of large SMEs and corporates is that they don't always have a strategy in play that they're actually working from. You know, they're not using it as a working document. So hopefully through this presentation and by the end of this presentation, you will have kind of everything that you need and a really kind of good understanding that you can kind of take away and implement into your business straight away to get your marketing strategy actually working for you and delivering some results. Just a little intro to us. What we do as a business is we are a full service plugin agency. So we do everything from website design and build, marketing strategy, social media management, content marketing, videography and photography, and kind of everything in between as well. So if you are looking for any support in those areas, we would absolutely love to hear from you. So just to get us started, controversially, lots of people have a little bit of, I think, arguments about what marketing actually is. So for my mind, marketing is absolutely everything when it comes to business, especially when you're an SME and especially now in this digital age. So whether you are speaking to your internal teams, you're communicating change, whatever it might be that you're doing, essentially you're trying to get them to do something, you're trying to persuade them of a particular action, you're trying to get them to potentially use new software, for example, or outside your organization, whatever situation you are in, if you are in a business setting, you are marketing your business. So for me, everything you do in your business can be related back to marketing, or absolutely should be related back to marketing where you can, to get that sort of perspective on your next steps as an organization. So it's how people get to know you and your business. Obviously, that's kind of number one, right? That is what the aim of marketing essentially is, for you to get as much brand recall, as much brand awareness out there in the market as humanly possible. That's kind of the end goal for most people. It encompasses a huge range of skills, and it is a huge range of skills. It's massive. A lot of people quite often think that social media is marketing, and that's kind of all there is to it. Or, you know, we've been named as the colouring department, or, you know, something equally as degrading. Thanks for that, guys. But actually, there is so much to it. It's unreal, right? You have everything from kind of writing skills through to technical skills, design work, and everything in between. So it isn't something that you can just kind of pick up and just know how to do. It can be owned, earned, or paid. So this is kind of from the marketing playbook. I'm sure most of you kind of know already what this means, but essentially if it's owned media, it is things like your website, your kind of branding, that kind of thing. If it's earned, it's something that is out there that somebody's done about you because they love your content or because they love your brand, and they're out there kind of shouting about you. So if you've got kind of influencers or your customers out there doing customer generated or audience generated content, that would be your earned media. And you've got your paid media, which is exactly what it says on the tin, essentially. It's something that you paid for, whether it be an advert in a magazine through to kind of Google paid ads or social media paid advertising. And for me, marketing is anything that becomes before qualifying a lead, during the sales process, and even after the purchase. So what do I mean by that? So for me, everything but the bit where the person is signing on that dotted line is marketing. You are trying to get that person to trust you and therefore buy from you. So even your salespeople, if they're out there picking up the phone, prospecting, that is marketing. And that's why most telesales agencies now will refer to themselves as telemarketing agencies, because actually picking up the phone on an absolute cold call and speaking to a person about your business is marketing. It's not sales. Sales is the bit that actually is something, you know, money changing hands, contracts being signed. That part is sales. So it's a skill in its own right and absolutely goes hand in hand with marketing. But I genuinely believe everything before, after, and even during is part of that marketing circle. And finally, it is absolutely key to business growth. If you are not marketing your business, if nobody knows who you are, you're not going to grow, right? So in its very simplest form, it is key to business growth. So when we kind of talk about marketing, lots of people are looking for free and or cheap ways of doing marketing, right? Of how to get their business name out there, which is great. Everyone wants the budget, especially now with these uncertain times that we have coming. But it's really key to remember that nothing is ever truly free. So if you want to kind of get your marketing strategy up together, it is going to take time, it's going to take effort. You need to have a willingness to learn, you need to have passion, and you have to have a belief in what you are doing, especially if you are a kind of smaller business where you might have a really kind of small team. You kind of need to make sure that you're kind of well placed in order to deliver a strategy that's going to work for you, and have the budgets to do so and the capacity to do so as well. Okay, so let's get planning then. So first up, this is a key piece for me. There's lots and lots of stuff that goes into marketing strategy, but for me, there is a few key bits that people quite often forget. And one of those kind of main pieces is defining your audience and understanding your audience. I often find that people just assume that their product is for everyone. You say, okay, let's talk about demographics then. Who is your product for? And their immediate response is always, oh, well, it's for everyone. Everyone can have it. Everyone can use my product. And that is totally untrue. No matter how commoditized you believe your product to be and how many kind of people you think, every single person uses toilet roll, for example. Every single person might use ketchup, for example, drinks Coca-Cola. But actually, there is still a really defined audience for those people. I've said it quite a few times, but I'll say it again. Even if you take the toilet roll example, everybody who is everybody, especially in the UK, will use toilet roll, right? But not everybody is going to want to use the same kind of toilet roll. Some people want scented, some people want wipes, some people use a bidet, whatever it might be, right? So not everybody is the same. Not everybody is going to want to use the same product. So therefore, your product, no matter how wide you think it is, not everybody is going to want it. So you need to be really, really specific about who that audience is. And when I say specific, I don't just mean, oh yeah, well, it's roughly, women that are 40 plus working in construction. You need to be far more specific than that, especially if you're going to do any sort of paid advertising, because it will really help you out later down the line with that targeting piece. So think about things like what they like, what they dislike. And I mean kind of even down to the point of kind of food that they eat, where they like to go out, things like, do they have children? Do they have families? Where do they go on holiday? All of these kind of things will help you build a really good picture of who your target audience is. Where they hang out is a really important one, and we will talk a little bit more about that in a second. But think about where they hang out, because actually social media might not be the place for you. And if you're putting all your eggs into social media, you might find that you'll get a far better result somewhere else. So understanding where your audience are is really, really key to the strategic process. How do they learn and what types of content do they consume? Kind of fit in together, but how do they learn is a huge one at the moment that people quite often miss. So people are going online all of the time, not just to go and kind of scroll through TikTok, although hands up, I do that pretty regularly, and I'm sure everybody else does too, just kind of inanely scroll through stuff. But actually, most people are going online to learn something as well. And quite often, the key factor that people miss when they're building their strategies is the education piece. And it's not just from a starting point. So everyone's probably seen the ACR model, where the first point is acquire, right? So generally speaking, when you're trying to acquire, you are looking to educate your audience on who you are, what you do, and why your product or service is good for them. But actually, it's a circular model, right? It goes round. So you should always be thinking about that acquisition process and educating your audience. And actually, even when you come into the retention section, so the last kind of bit of that puzzle, people want to learn. So if you're cross-selling, upselling, you've got other services that your clients might want to use, or other products, then you're going to need to continually be educating your audience. So how do they learn is a really, really good place to start from. So if it's video content, for example, then you know you should be producing more video content, and you should include video content in your strategy. And then what types of content do they consume? Essentially feeds back into that as well. So are they looking at video content? If they're of certain age demographics, there's some really good tools out there that kind of show you how they like to be communicated at different stages of life. So you generally find your younger audience wants to be communicated through social media, through a phone. They don't want to be have a phone call. They don't want to talk to somebody. They don't want you to ring them up and invade their time and their space. But actually a much older demographic do quite like people to speak to a real person, and they don't mind talking over the phone as well. And then somewhere in the middle, they like a mixture of the two, and they like to consume their information online, as well as kind of dealing with real people, and they don't mind so much picking up the phone. So understanding how they're consuming content and how they like to be communicated with is really, really important. So create a good persona. Lots of people think this is a bit wanky. Yeah, maybe you do, but actually it really works. And if you have a big team, or you're trying to communicate who you want to reach to an external provider, then having a really good persona really just helps you keep in mind who your ideal client is, right? Who you're talking to. So you can visualize a real person when you're creating content, or when you're creating a piece of marketing activity. So you kind of know in your head what's going to resonate. Not that that always works. It's not, you know, a surefire method, but it really does help to get your messaging right. And I would also recommend having multiple personas for multiple services and products as well. And then a big one to remember, a huge one that I get a lot when we're dealing with our clients, is to remember that what you're producing is for your audience. It is not for you. So if you're picking something up and saying, oh, I don't really like the way that's written, if you are not your target audience, it doesn't matter. It does not matter if you don't like it. What matters is that your audience likes it. So don't do a knee-jerk reaction and go, oh, I just really don't like that piece of content, or I don't like that strategy, etc. Have a think about who your audience is first, and then make a decision on whether it's a good piece of content or a good strategy to put in place. So this is just an example of a customer persona that we use regularly. So this one has come from HubSpot. So it's just hubspot.com/make-my-persona. It's a really straightforward way to create them, and it takes you through step by step to pull this together. The one that I've done here is actually based on a real person. She's actually another marketing agency owner who specializes in LinkedIn marketing. And Gemma uses our platform to connect up her clients' LinkedIn profiles, so she can manage all of her profiles in one place. So what I've done here is kind of created this based on Gemma, but you don't have to have a real person. However, you should use real data. So I appreciate if you're a startup business, or you don't have any data available because you haven't been collecting it, that might be more difficult. But from this moment on, please collect data, as much data as you possibly can on your customers. Because this will give you real world data that you can go away and build into a persona, so you can then market to the right types of people. So you might think that your target market is a certain demographic, but actually, if you are collecting real world data, you may well see that the patterns in who your actual target audience are very, very different. Or you might see that you've kind of missed a whole demographic that you haven't been marketing to, but actually it could be a really quick win because they're already starting to purchase your product or service, right? So when we're creating this buyer persona, we need to look at the first bit, which is, are they believable? Is the person that you've created actually realistic? You know, hopefully they're not some unicorn that you kind of just think exists and actually don't. So we do really need to be considering what we're doing, be realistic about the persona that you put together. And it is better if there is, you know, you do know somebody like that, or it's based on real data that you've collected, which brings us on to the second piece here, which is real data. Have you based it on real data that is available, or are you just guessing it? If you are just guessing it, and I realize there's a misspelt guess in there, but anyway, if you are just guessing it, that's not the best way to kind of pull your strategy together, or really kind of get the best return on investment from what you're delivering. As I said before, if you don't have the real data available, then it does have to be a little bit of a guessing game, but there are things that you can put in place to kind of deliver some of that data that you're looking for. Costs money, so things like paid advertising, Google Ads. People often just look at it as a lead generation tool, but actually using it as a market research tool is really, really helpful. So if you haven't got any real data, start collating your data, make sure it's easily accessible, and make sure you're using that data to then feed back into your buyer persona and your audiences so that you can create a strategy that's actually going to deliver for you. And then the final piece is, will they want it? So sadly, I've kind of met a lot of startup businesses or people that are looking to kind of diversify their service offering, and assume that the idea that they've come up with is really great and everyone's going to want to buy it. Unfortunately, that is not the case. So you need to kind of know that your audience are actually going to want to buy your service, right? Because we don't do this stuff for fun. We're actually looking for some conversions. We're looking to make a profit. That's what we're in business for. So will your audience want it? A really easy way to do this, if you're already an existing business, is to do some basic market research on your current clients and your current audience to see what the uptake of a new product or service might be. If you are a startup business, then do your market research and make sure that it's really kind of stringent in the first instance so that you know kind of what a general uptake on your product or service might be within your kind of desired demographic. Okay, so choosing your channel. So based on what we've kind of just talked about with our audience, how do we now, once we've defined our audience, go on to picking where we're actually going to market to? And I appreciate this is a really kind of whistle-stop tour of a marketing strategy, but the next step, natural step, is to kind of choose those channels. So first off, we need to think about our external factors. Again, likely not defining your audience enough. This is another piece that I find people miss quite frequently, and it's not looking at what external factors could potentially affect your marketing strategy and your business over kind of the coming year, 2 years, 5 years, etc. So we do something called a pestle analysis, which kind of looks at various elements of external factors. So it's political, economical, sociological, technological, legal, and ethical. So you can see it kind of covers a lot of areas, and what we do is kind of pull through is essentially what we want to what's going to affect our business. Okay, so I know over the last couple of years we've obviously had COVID. Don't really want to talk too much about COVID because it's getting a bit boring these days, but no one could really see that coming. However, there have been other kind of areas where we have kind of seen coming, and yet people haven't really factored that into how that might affect their business. For example, looking at things like Brexit and how that can affect your marketing, and not just from a perspective of you're going to have a natural drop in certain areas, but also from a perspective of the language that you're using in your marketing. Being aware and essentially reading the room. We've all seen those memes where it says kind of read the room, where people have got things really, really wrong in their marketing by not kind of understanding external factors and what's going on, in the world around them. So this particular piece is really quite important. And what it allows us to do is then pull out a strategy to overcome some of the threats that we kind of find from anything externally that's going on. And also opportunities as well. So it's not all doom and gloom. In some of what's going on, even through Brexit and COVID, there has been businesses that have taken, seen massive growth where everyone else has seen a drop, purely because of the nature of the business they do. Through COVID, anyone that was delivering things, like medical equipment or hand sanitizers or anything like that, masks, obviously saw absolutely huge growth and really benefited from that issue, that problem that was happening in the world. So there is times when it might look like doom and gloom, but actually in some areas you can see some benefit from it. Not that we want to capitalize on issues and things that are going wrong, but you do need to kind of be aware of how it might affect your business. So those businesses, for example, some of them have now gone bust because they didn't really prepare for the fact that at some point there wasn't going to be such a need for hand sanitizers and face masks. So they didn't prepare for a switch back to normal life. And therefore now, you know, they've got no business coming through the door, and they've had to let people go, etc. So moving on to the next bit, then we've got our TOWS analysis. Now, I'm sure most of you have heard of a SWOT. Some of you may well have heard of a TOWS analysis as well. But if you don't know what a TOWS analysis is, it is essentially SWOT spelled backwards. No, I'm joking. What it is a more in-depth look at the SWOT analysis. So what we do is we look at the usual strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and then we build out our strategy based on each of those. So we put this into a grid with our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats opposite each other. And then what we're going to do is work out a strategy based on our strengths and opportunities, for example, and then versus strengths and our threats, as an example. So if we're looking at, if we take Brexit as an example, and we do a lot of work with independent schools. So if the strength is that we do a lot of work with independent schools and we understand how to build a local market for an independent school, but the threat is potentially Brexit, actually we can use our strength that we know how to build local markets to support that and overcome that threat of them losing more international students. So we can easily build out, or more easily build out, a strategy that actually aligns our strengths and our opportunities to our weaknesses and our threats in a way that actually overcomes them and means that the strategy is going to deliver regardless of anything externally that's going on and based on our current resources as well. So obviously I put in here use your customer persona because I've talked about customer persona already. But use your audience, understand your audience, and use that to look at your channels. So if everybody is saying, oh, you know, we're on Facebook, all your competitors are on Facebook, that's great. But just because your competitors are on there does not mean that that is where you should be. Because do you know if your competitors have done a proper customer analysis? Possibly not. Do they truly understand their audience? Or are they all jumping on the bandwagon for going on a particular channel because that's what everybody else is doing? I mean, that's one way of kind of keeping up with your competitors, I guess, but it's not necessarily going to deliver you the return on investment that you're looking for. So understand where they are, where they're hanging out, like I mentioned before. If you're a B2B business, likelihood is that you want a decision maker and you want to be able to kind of contact them fairly swiftly. And also start to build a relationship with them potentially, depending on how you structure your sales process. If that is the case, then obviously LinkedIn is a really good place to go. If you are selling a bottle of gin, for example, you probably will get some traction on LinkedIn because obviously everybody drinks gin. Most people drink gin. But is that going to be where the main majority of gin drinkers are hanging out? Probably not. It's a consumer product. So whilst you probably will see some return from somewhere like LinkedIn, you're much better off spending some time understanding where those people are going to be and putting your products in that space. You're going to see a much better return. You've niched it down and you're not wasting time, money, or resources in an area that's going to deliver a smaller return on investment. So think about your user journey. So this is right from that first acquisition piece. So where are they finding you and how are they finding you, right through to that conversion. So we're finding more and more people are smart now. You know, people know what they want and they know how to research it, and they are going away and they are looking for businesses that are going to support their needs and kind of solve their problems. So think about that user journey, because it isn't always, oh, I've written pay for some paid ads, for example. I've written some really great ad copy. I've put it out on Google, set it live, and then that's it. You need to think about where these people are going. Quite often, if someone sees an ad, for example, they're not immediately going to purchase, especially not if you are a service-based business. They're going to want to do some more research. So where are they going? What are their thoughts and feelings as they hit each stage of that user journey as well? And how long does it take them to get to a point of conversion where they trust you enough as a business to go and kind of pick up the phone and actually kind of make that sell and join you as a customer? So there is a really good which actually got from Lead Forensics, a really good Harvard study, which actually says that most consumers, most people that are purchasing, will purchase at point 9, so contact point 9, and people are generally giving up around contact point 3. So if you are doing any sort of sales marketing journey, looking at sales cadence, any of that kind of stuff, you need to be in front of that person 9 times before they are going to engage with you on average. So some will do, pick up and want to work with you much sooner. Some never will, and some will be kind of more than 9 times. But 9 times on average is where there's a huge spike in conversion rates. So think about that. Think about that user journey. And especially if you're a digital business, think about your user journey on the website. If you have a website that isn't optimized for your user journey, the chances are you're going to get a really high bounce rate. People are going to jump straight back off because they can't find what they're looking for. So make it as easy as possible for your users to want to work with you and to get what they need from wherever it is that you are engaging with them. If it's on social media, if it's on a website, if it's physically, whatever, you need to make that user journey as simple and as easy as possible. So think about your objectives. Again, this is something that people have a really kind of high overview objective often, or don't have any at all. So, they're like, well, we want to be a, 30 million pound turnover business within 5 years. Okay, great. So how are you going to get there? That's a really great goal to have, but how are you actually going to achieve that goal? And you need to break this down into bite-sized steps. And this is no different from your marketing as well. And in addition to that, you need to break it down per channel, per activity that you do. So if you're thinking about, okay, we've decided that we are a B2B business, therefore we know that our audience is sitting on LinkedIn. We've looked at that user journey, how they're going to get from LinkedIn through to purchasing, etc., etc. Great. So LinkedIn is where you want to go. So what exactly from LinkedIn, what is your objective for LinkedIn? Have you worked it out that a certain number of followers, targeted followers, really specific demographic, will deliver a specific number of visitors to your website, which will then convert into X amount of purchases? That is what you need to think about. If that is the case, great. Followers, increasing your follower numbers is a good objective to have. If you haven't gone down that road and you just want to see new followers, well, that's great. But how many new followers do you want? Why do you want them? You have to dig a little bit deeper than just saying, well, I want to grow my social media channels, or I want to see an increase in website traffic. Because it has to be the right kind of traffic and it has to convert, right? That's the end goal, is always getting conversions from your marketing. And then lastly, think about your product or service. So this kind of fits in a little bit with kind of your customer persona as well, your user journey and all of those bits. But if you've got a product that is very visual, then going on somewhere in a social media channel, for example, that is going to showcase that in the best light is where you want to look for. So, there's no point in having a really service-based business and just throwing everything into Instagram, for example. I mean, there might be, but the chances are that if you've got a service-based business and you're looking for professional people, you want to engage with senior decision makers, etc., LinkedIn is going to be your best bet, right? And then think about things like offline marketing as well. So are there publications, newspapers that you want to get in? Are there business magazines, etc., that you might want to go to? Networking events, your marketing showcases, anything like that, as we're doing right now. Is there where are your audience, and where is your product best placed to be showcased to that audience? So you need to think about that in addition to where your customers are hanging out. And then finally, what resources do you have and how much time do you have to commit to marketing? So if you're from a big corporate, great, you've probably got a pretty large budget. You've probably got some team that you can shuffle about. You can probably bring in external support when you're needed, when you need to, etc. But if you're a smaller business, and actually even if you are a big corporate, there is often a finite amount of time, right, that you have. There's a finite amount of resources that you have, money, etc. So think about how much time you have to commit, and then break this down into what channels are then suitable. So this is why you can't generally say, yeah, we're just going to be on every single channel. We're going to do everything our competitors do. We're going to attack our marketing from every single angle, because chances are you won't do any of it well. You'll end up spreading yourself too thin, and then you won't see a decent return from any of the platforms, even the ones that you could see a very good return from. So just think about that, and truly how much time you need to spend on each channel that you want to work on, and then what resources you're going to need to deliver on that strategy. Okay, so I've talked quite a lot about kind of how to go about choosing your channels, and then how do we kind of work out which ones from there are going to be right for you and your business. So I mean, there's loads, right? So there's lots of stuff that you can kind of pick from. I would, as a recommendation, always go with social media of some kind as a digital business. If you're an offline business, not always necessary, but it's where you can kind of get your biggest audience and the most eyes on your products and services for the cheapest price, right? So it's always worth doing. Email marketing is still the number one way to get conversions in the digital age. You probably don't believe it, but it is absolutely true. Email marketing is a really, really good way of really targeting the people that you want to work with and remarketing to the people that you want to work with and converting them easily without being too invasive, right? I know you might not think that's true with the amount of emails that we all get every day, but if you can do one that is good quality, and again, going back to those 9 points of contact in an automated way that feels personalized, then email marketing will absolutely deliver. It always does. And again, you have to go back to making sure that you have the right audience. Don't just buy a load of data and just hope for the best. Make sure that it's well targeted and well defined before you start that. Google My Business. Everybody misses Google My Business, I find, but actually it's a really good way to, A, from an SEO perspective, and B, just a kind of an additional place to showcase your products and services. So people don't often realize that there is a posting there's a posting element to it as well. So you can use it almost like a social media channel where you can create posts and have them posted to your Google My Business profile. And if you optimize this well, this is how you are going to get found in the SERP on maps and that kind of thing as well. So it's really good from an SEO perspective, and lots of people are missing it. So it's always worth considering that. Influencer marketing can be expensive. It's obviously not always free, but we've seen a massive growth recently in influencer marketing. So if you're a product-based business, 100%, if you get the right influencers, influencer marketing will deliver a return for you 9 times out of 10. But it's really important to understand that you don't just kind of pick one because they've got loads of followers. You need to kind of tick off that A, yes, they've got a good number of followers. B, that those followers are engaged in what they're doing. So if you've got someone's got 500,000 followers and they're not getting any engagement on any of their posts, chances are they probably bought those followers, or they're not the right kind of people that you want for your campaign. So you need to make sure the engagement is good. You need to make sure their values are aligned with your brand as well. If you are a nutrition brand, for example, talking about how to improve skin with nutrition, aligning yourself with somebody who does Botox is probably not the best thing to do, right? So make sure that the person that you choose to work with and partner with is actually aligned with your brand and your values, and it makes sense. And the audience are again, going back to that audience definition, are aligned with the audience that you're looking to attract as well. So SEO, this bit here is absolutely key, I think, for any digital business, any business that's got a website. If you're not doing SEO and you're not doing it well, you are missing out, because SEO is the only way to drive your business up in Google rankings and get more website traffic, essentially, online. It is, you can kind of do a good amount of work but see massive returns from SEO without having to invest heavily in things like paid advertising. I'm not saying don't do paid advertising. Often when you first start with SEO, you need to have a mixture of both. But over time, what you should find is that if your SEO strategy is strong, that those keywords that you're looking to rank for, you start to rank for organically, and therefore you can drop your ad spend or keep it the same if you want to make sure that you're kind of taking a market share from your competitors. But having a really strong SEO strategy will see you take market share from competitors quite quickly in a lot of cases. Because most people aren't doing it. Most people don't invest their time in search engine optimization because they don't understand it, or they think it's, you know, a bit of witchcraft or whatever it might be. But if you can get this working for you solidly, it will deliver time and time again, no doubt. We put an SEO strategy in for a client recently. We were working on it for 8 weeks, and he won a £2.5 million contract off the back of the work that we did across that 8-week period. He's still an ongoing client now, but yeah, it works, and that was purely because we got him ranking for a UK-wide key term that was actually quite competitive, and he got that, and essentially they went onto Google, searched for what they were looking for. He came up within the top 5, and he got the contract. So, I mean, you can't really turn your nose down at £2.5 million, right, for 8 weeks work. So it's 100% worth doing. Which also leads us on to the PR aspect as well. So PR, everybody I think that I've ever met generally is like, oh, it's so expensive, oh, what's the point, etc., etc., especially if they're service-based businesses. But PR is absolutely fantastic for not only brand awareness, but if you are going physical publication and digital publication, it is great for getting good quality backlinks from really high domain authority websites. So it is well worth looking at building PR into your strategy. And even if you aren't kind of throwing loads of money at it, which you don't need to, you can do it in a very strategic way. So looking at things like business magazines, if you're, you know, service-based business, for example, or partnering up with much smaller publications that might be more cost effective, but actually deliver a very similar return on investment. So think about PR. Don't kind of brush it off as something that, you know, only the massive brands do, because it really isn't. And if you can find a really good PR agency or individual freelancer, they're absolutely worth their weight in gold. Speaking engagements are great. I do probably 7 or 8 a year. So if you are looking to, if you're sort of small to medium sized enterprise, or even big enterprise, to be honest, if you can get yourself to as many speaking engagements as possible, you're positioning yourself as that person or that business of authority. And therefore, you will see an increase in conversions from that, because people automatically, you're kind of borrowing that trust from the place that you're speaking at, like the Marketing Showcase, for example. Marketing Showcase would not have people that didn't know anything about marketing talking at their events. So immediately you're borrowing that trust, and you're getting yourself in front of a lot of eyes very quickly. Guest blogging is also great, again, for us an SEO perspective, but also for making great contacts within your industry. Guest blogging, when you're talking for backlink strategy, again, like I said, feeds back into the SEO stuff. But if you can get good domain authority ranking sites, and you can kind of fill in and guest blog for them, that's going to give you more ranking essentially on Google, and it will kind of drive more traffic. And you'll also should pick up natural traffic from the backlinks that you've got within those blogs as well. And again, you're pitching yourself as an authority figure. And then lastly, again, this is an SEO from an SEO perspective as well, is online directories. So if you can get yourself in as many online directories as possible, you're going to get some decent backlinks from that. Just be a little bit careful on this one that you are not going on the spammy type sites. If they've got a really low domain authority, they're absolutely not really worth going on, because you're not going to have any benefit from that. But yeah, get yourself some online directories, and you will see, again, that will kind of give you some more domain authority, give you some more backlinks, and it will help your website to grow and build traffic. So a couple of kind of really key things to remember here is, first one, don't be a sheep. I said it before, but don't choose channels that because everybody else is doing it. Make sure that you're choosing them based on all the factors that we've just talked about: external factors, your audience, how you're going to showcase your product or service, etc. how much time you have for your marketing, and all of those other things. Don't just go, oh, well, you know, our competitors sitting on Twitter, so we should be on Twitter. It's not always going to be right for your business. And actually standing out from the crowd may well be for you not being on all those social media channels. It worked really well for Lush as a brand because, you know, their brand is all about wellness, sustainability, etc. They didn't feel that social media aligned, you know, across the board aligned with their brand values anymore, so they removed themselves from it. So I'm not saying that we should all just go and remove ourselves from social media, but it's just really important to understand who you are as a brand, what you want to achieve, and what your audience are after before you go ahead and choose those channels. Don't spread yourself too thin. This kind of goes into that one as well. But if you choose every single channel going, you want to go every single bit of marketing you could possibly think of, you're going to spread yourself too thin 9 times out of 10. Again, if you're a huge corporation, you've got a massive marketing department, you know, then possibly not. But for most businesses, they are going to be a bit more strategic about what they do and when, and what channels they pick. So pick the channels that work well for you, that you're going to see a return on, and do them really, really well. And then don't give up too soon. This is one that I see all too often is, you know, you get 4 weeks into a marketing campaign on social media, for example, and particularly if it's an organic strategy, it's, oh, well, it's not working. You know, 2 to 3 weeks is not enough time for a marketing strategy to settle in and work for you, especially organically. If you are looking for organic growth, you are talking 12 months plus before you start to see decent returns from some of this stuff. So continuous monitoring, improving, tweaking the strategy is what you need to do, but just giving up after 4 weeks is not the one. Like, this is just not going to work. So make sure that you don't give up too soon. And you are kind of making sure that you are reaching the right people at the right time and nice and consistently, and the results will come for you. Okay, so kind of been through this already, but what would we as a business generally recommend to our clients? And this is exactly what it is. So have a vision and mission. So we talked a bit about objectives before. So kind of just on a larger scale, have a vision and mission. So not only do you know what you're trying to achieve, so does your team, and so does anyone else that you're going to work with, right? If you don't have a vision and mission, how do you know where you're going? How do you know where you need to steer the ship? You know, how do you know how to get there? You don't. So have a really defined vision and mission. Have a really well-defined and realistic goal. So make sure that you work backwards. Generally think about the goal that you want to achieve, work backwards from there, and work out step by step what it's going to take for you to achieve that goal. If it's like £1 million by next week, 9 times out of 10, that's probably not going to be realistic. So do your research on this one, get a solid goal in place, and then monitor it as you go to make sure that you're hitting those key milestones to achieve that goal. Have a well-defined audience. I think I've banged on about it enough, but this is absolutely key. You need to have a well-defined audience in order to understand who you're marketing to. If you don't know where you're going, what you're doing, what your goal is, and who you are actually trying to talk to, then you literally, you know, pissing up a wall, to be honest with you. Like, what's the point? Like, that you don't know what you're doing, you don't know how you're going to get there, and you don't know who you're talking to. So you might as well just be randomly producing content, which is likely what you would be doing if you don't have these things in place. A good mix of offline and online marketing. So this one is, I think, really, really key. I think too often now everybody is putting all their eggs into the digital space, which is great. As a digital marketing agency, we do some offline stuff as well, actually quite a bit of it. But predominantly a digital marketing agency. You know, I think it's great that people have adopted digital marketing into their businesses, but actually there is a wealth of benefit to having offline marketing strategies as well. And people have often moved completely away from that offline marketing and aren't using it at all, which means now is an opportune time to actually start using some offline methods, because chances are your competitors aren't. So it's always worth having a good mix. A good website. I think no matter what business you are these days, you have to have a good website. But a website is never finished. Never ever. So once you have a website built, it should be well optimized for SEO. It should be built with the user in mind. So have a good UX, good user experience. It should look aesthetically pleasing, and it should be easy for the user to achieve the goals that you want them to achieve, right? I.e. convert into a customer, pick up the phone, whatever your conversion is. Once you've set that up, that you're not done. You're never done. So it's always an ongoing thing, working on SEO, improving the journey, adding to your website, etc. And having a good website, even if you think, I'm not bothered, I don't want people to convert on my site, great, but people will go and look for a website. And if you don't have one, 9 times out of 10, the consumers will think that you are not a legitimate business. So generally speaking, people will hear about you somewhere. They will then go to your website, they'll go on your social media channels, they'll possibly look at Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, wherever it might be, whoever your audience is. That is where they'll be going to see if there's consistent updates on there, consistent content going out, and build that trust with your brand. So a good website is absolutely key, along with social media. So if you're digital presence, you need to be on some social media. Which channel that is entirely up to you based on your audience, but you need to be on there. And just simply posting on social media is not going to deliver you the return that you think it will. So a lot of people say, oh, we post 3 or 4 times a week and I've had nothing back. Unfortunately, that's because it is not just about posting. Engagement is absolutely key when it comes to social media. And actually, these days, more and more businesses are hiring people specifically to work on individual channels. So, in a marketing team, you'll have a Facebook specialist, a TikTok specialist, you'll have an Instagram specialist, Twitter, LinkedIn, etc., etc. Some will have, most people will have transferable skills and understand each channel, but the channels themselves are just so complex now, that you have to understand what you're doing on there, and going on and engaging with your audience on those channels is how you're going to get that growth. Simply just posting a couple of times a week with a random sales post just isn't going to deliver the results that you're looking for. So then I've got SEO. I mentioned it in the last slide, but SEO, absolutely key. If you are not consistently working on your SEO, you are missing a trick. You absolutely should have this as part of your strategy. And actually, if you get a good, solid SEO strategy, then that will also feed into your strategy for everything else. So it can feed into your social media stuff, content writing, content production within videography and photography as well, offline marketing even, guest blogging, backlinking, anything you can think of. Essentially, you can build your SEO strategy first and then feed that into the rest of your marketing strategy. And then finally, I've got on here networking as well, because this is a big one that people miss. And whether you do this online or offline, building a network is a really, really great way to build trust really quickly with people. And again, it's an offline method that people miss quite a lot now. So if you are in a space to go networking and go out and market your business in person to people, then I would absolutely recommend that as well. So that is it for my talk today. Very whistle-stop tour on marketing strategy. There's a whole lot more that kind of needs to go into this and pull into this, but hopefully it's given you some information to take away immediately and implement into your businesses and into your teams. Thank you very much for listening.